So as someone who has covered the Nintendo Switch in depth on this channel for the last 3+ years now, it's actually been very interesting to watch the hybrid gaming market completely evolve within that time frame. We saw the success that the Switch was and is currently at its 129+ million units officially sold and in the hands of consumers. And we've seen plenty of other companies take notice of that, offering something similar to try to get a piece of that hybrid gaming pie. We of course most notably have the Steam Deck, which works great if you're a PC gamer and you want to play your Steam games on the go. And while I think you could say that's not a direct competitor to the Nintendo Switch, as it seems to have more of its own audience that does gravitate more towards that PC gaming crowd, there's no doubt that it has been vastly successful in its own right, especially considering that you can't walk into a Walmart or Best Buy and buy it, but rather you have to go direct fulfillment from Steam. We're now getting a plethora of different PC handhelds, such as the Asus ROG Ally, as well as Lenovo having their own device that straight up looks like a Nintendo Switch with the detachable Joy-Cons. Later this year, we know Sony is releasing their remote play device known as the PlayStation Portal, which, in case you're not familiar, this is not something that can natively run games, but rather aims to stream them as a dedicated device, and you really have to have a rock-solid Wi-Fi connection to get the games to perform up to an acceptable level. But while we talk about the major companies like Nintendo, Microsoft, and Sony all kind of battling for your attention as a gamer, we actually have a massive company that recently, I feel like, have been sending a message that they are slowly taking the gaming sector and audience far more seriously, and that is none other than Apple, because at the iPhone presentation that we saw, which unveiled the iPhone 15 lineup, we had Apple mention gaming numerous times throughout this presentation, as they were really trying to sell the upgraded GPU that specifically is in the iPhone 15 Pro series as something that truly separates that phone line from anything else in terms of mobile devices on the market today. And in the past, we have seen Apple mention gaming with things like more casual AR games where you're using your camera and having fun with others in the room. And there's no doubt there will be a continued focus on that with things like the Apple Vision Pro that's around the corner. And we've also seen them promote Apple Arcade quite a bit, which is their subscription service, which, to be fair, does tend to have a number of sleeper hit games from what I can see. I've definitely seen some positive things said about Apple Arcade exclusive games, and while I haven't taken time to check them out myself, it's something that is slowly gaining traction in the background that you kind of have to keep your eye out for. And the biggest announcement in terms of gaming news at this Apple iPhone 15 event was the fact that we would have multiple native games make it over to iPhone 15 Pro hardware later this year. As you can see the following tweet over from Tom Warren on X, which reads, Resident Evil Village, Resident Evil 4 Remake, and Death Stranding are coming to iPhone 15 Pro later this year. Assassin's Creed Mirage will be available in early 2024, the first time the console version of Assassin's Creed is natively available on a smartphone. Now, at first glance, you may dismiss that and think this is just one of the many different features that were talked about in the iPhone 15 Pro at this event, but interestingly, this does signify Apple really recognizing that there is a large audience to be captured and a lot of money to be made in the gaming sector, and I will be very interesting to see how they play this out from here. Now, there are a few things we're going to have to watch with these particular game releases, one of which is the price point, because you're probably familiar that with the mobile phone crowd, there is a lot of gotcha games. There is a lot of free-to-play games that you will want to upgrade and spend additional money as you play and get more hooked into that game and the ecosystem in order to unlock various skins and upgrades, new levels and content, you name it. It kind of strings you along seamlessly into the game. Will the mobile crowd, where they stand right now, be okay with things like a $60 or $70 price tag that no doubt these games will likely be sold at in the App Store? It will be very interesting to see how that transpires. You also have the conversation around touchscreen controls, meaning you now have to purchase an additional accessory to really have a true gaming experience on this iPhone 15 Pro device. There are a number of really nice looking ones out there. Backbone makes a fantastic, what I would consider to be probably a better option than the PlayStation Portal as a controller that you can slide onto your smartphone, and it works with iPhone today, although USB-C is now a thing, so maybe they'll have to rework that, or maybe the Android version will work with the iPhone now, who knows. But anyway, Backbone has that solution, and it actually makes it look something like a portable handheld device similar to the Nintendo Switch, albeit with a smaller screen. And when you have traditional controls and you have the kind of graphics power that Apple is touting, with things like these games being capable of hardware-based ray tracing on the platform, very impressive. And just the fact that these games are in their native console versions, no streaming required, is a big deal. Now, the big caveat to all of the praise around Apple potentially being able to run some of these games very nicely in comparison to their console counterparts, and yes, it's a portable device, has to do with the price point, because you're probably well aware that the iPhone 15 Pro line starts at $1,000, and that is clearly a lot of money compared to what Sony, Microsoft, or Nintendo are asking the consumer to put down to get into their gaming ecosystems. You've probably noticed that a PlayStation 5 retails for $499.99 here in the US, so just under $500 to get into a PS5. That is not something you can take on the go, but that is the entry price point to get into that console. If you don't care about physical games, you can actually get away with $400 to get into a PS5. Similar price points for Xbox and their consoles, with the Xbox Series S coming in at just $300, digital only console, and then you have the Series X, which is the more graphically capable console, coming in at $499, and of course Nintendo doing it this entire time with a lineup of 3 different consoles of the Switch Lite starting out at $199. No dockable capability though, keep in mind on that model. Then you have the base model Switch that we know and love that has been around since 2017, selling at $299, and you have the Nintendo Switch OLED model, which is definitely a worthwhile upgrade with its 7-inch OLED display for $349. And so when you compare that apples to apples, no pun intended, with what Apple is offering at $1,000, you might immediately dismiss it and say there's no way you can consider Apple as a competitor in this space, because the price gap is just too different compared to what everybody else is asking. And to that, I would actually say that yes, while you can kind of make that argument if you're talking about it being a dedicated gaming device, there is actually a different conversation to be had with iPhone, because it is something that people own anyway. It is a device that you might have an Android or you might have an iPhone, but chances are in 2023, in the modern day, you have a smartphone of some sort. So people do factor that into purchase decisions, and you're probably not going to go buy the iPhone 15 Pro just for gaming. But if you were going to get the iPhone 15 base model and then you figure out you can run native console games for $200 more on the Pro model, that can justify the cost for a lot of consumers. Not to mention the fact that in the cell phone industry, there are constantly trade up and upgrade offers, or if you're switching carriers, there's sometimes free phones if you trade in what you have to get the new one via bill credits and commitments and all of that kind of stuff. But it is a subsidized market where there is a lot of ways to get that $1,000 down to almost nothing or a very small monthly payment, which is much more digestible than going in and spending $1,000 retail at an Apple store to walk out with the device. And that is just the reality of the access to consumers that Apple has with their broader business strategy. So it will be very interesting to see if they pour more money into the gaming sector, because we are talking about a company that has the revenue to do Microsoft level acquisitions. When we talk about the biggest merger in gaming history ever being the Activision Blizzard merger from Microsoft, Apple has that same kind of capital and that same kind of cash flow sitting in the bank to essentially be able to purchase mega companies within the gaming space. And I think if they see the return on investment in this market, they may indeed dive into that deeper. And we've seen Microsoft raise these exact concerns recently with things like the FTC legal trial that was going on for the Activision Blizzard merger, where Microsoft's bigger concern is not with PlayStation and with Nintendo Switch. Although they are trying to catch up to these consoles, they are actually voicing bigger concerns of these mega giant companies like Apple and like even potentially Amazon and Netflix even toying around with gaming. So I found this very fascinating myself, that we may indeed be witnessing the beginning of a new competitor in the gaming market in a different way. It won't compete in the one-to-one console space at this point in time, but as this technology continues to progress and more developers get on board with natively porting their games to Apple hardware, and Apple continuing to promote it with mobile play capabilities, as well as Apple TV being able to stream that to your TV or even play some games natively on the Apple TV, it will be very interesting to see if they attempt to take over the home, quote unquote, when it comes to how gamers interact and choose to purchase their games, and that will remain to be seen. But I did find this gaming section of the Apple iPhone 15 event to be rather fascinating amongst all of the ongoing change within the hybrid gaming landscape, and the iPhone 15 Pro does fit into that conversation in my opinion personally. But I really want to hear from you guys at this point in the video, your personal thoughts and opinions around this matter. Do you think we will see Apple continue to make gaming more of a focus and continue to see them pour more dollars into getting developers to get native versions of their games, maybe even launch day and date on Apple hardware in the future? Or do you think this is one of those Google type experiments where maybe they're starting to mess around with gaming, but they may come out with some products and then kind of make it an afterthought eventually and not really ever be a true competitor in Microsoft, Nintendo, and Sony space overall? But regardless of your thoughts and feelings on everything we talked about today, I do look forward to hearing from you all in the comments down below before you leave the video, as I do look forward to getting a back and forth conversation started with you all around these topics. Go watch yesterday's video next if you haven't already, which is on screen right now. Also make sure you like, subscribe, turn on your notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.